To our 1993 World Champion, how about a big round of applause for Kevin Schwantz?
Thank you. Everybody good today? Enjoying the Sunday at the show? Lots of people.
This has been a great show this weekend. I think, in fact, it's been one of our better Los Angeles shows. You know, Kevin is one of these past champions, and in my book, a current champion in many respects. He's given so much back to the sport. He does a lot of mentoring, a lot of coaching, working with different teams and different riders, and he's had for a while now a school that gives you and I the ability to kind of learn a few things from Kevin and his staff. We want to talk about that, the Kevin Schwantz Riding School, but we want to make the point that it's not about a racing school.
You know, it's really not. That's one of the things that I think we struggle with, and that is getting over my reputation as a racer. Teaching a school on the track, everybody just assumes that it's going to be a racing school. Absolutely not. I feel like I do enough work with young kids, with riders who are just turning professional, who are aspiring to become world champions, but I don't need my school to be based around that. My school is based around making us as motorcyclists more responsible riders on the street. You know, there's a lot that we can learn on the track. We can practice our braking technique. We can practice our body position to a certain extent. We can really practice on where our visual awareness needs to be, so that when a situation comes and confronts us on the street, that it's not a surprise to us. We know what to do, how to not panic, how to not focus off the edge of the road or into the side of the car and just go straight there, but yet focus your attention on knowing that you have the skills, the bike handling skills, to be able to steer around the problem. Don't lock up the rear brake, you modulate the front brake, you make some downshift, and you steer around the problem that's coming at you. So on the track we have, you know, depending on the length of the track, 2 miles, 3 miles of racetrack that we can control. So I have the ability to put you out with a bunch of instructors, let you ride around and let you ride to what you're comfortable doing. Let the instructors follow you, let them work with you, and continue to make your skill set as far as a motorcyclist goes that much better, so that when that inopportune situation confronts you on the road, you know what to do and how to survive it.
And now, if I want to go to the school, one of us wants to come out to the school, where are you located, and how do we, find out some information on the school and whatnot, all the details?
We haven't announced our 2012 dates just yet, but we'll be back at Road Atlanta next year. We'll probably do 6 dates, maybe 7, starting in April. We're going to do a couple of dates, hopefully at Indianapolis, maybe just 1, but possibly 2 dates there. And Schwantzschool.com is the easiest way to go find out what's going on and when our next school is and what the availability is like. The other thing that's, I think, really important about school is we've got Suzuki and Honda motorcycles, brand new CBR 600s, GSXR 600s, with brand new Michelin tires on them. We put new tires on every second school. You're not going to show up and get to ride a bike that's got cords showing on the tires. And then easy leather boots and gloves, the very best helmet that there is out there, in an Arai helmet. And I mean, you could show up like you're standing here today and we could have you riding in the afternoon. So we've got everything we need there. One thing that's new for 2012 is we're going to allow any brand of motorcycle to be brought to the school. In the past, we've stuck with just Suzukis and Hondas. You can only bring the brand of bike that we have sponsorship at the school for. But in talking to the manufacturers, we're going to open that up and we're going to allow other brands to be brought. So if you choose to bring brand X, Y, or Z, something besides the Honda or the Suzuki, you're more than welcome to do that. And we think by the end of the weekend, maybe the opportunity to get you the chance to sit on a Suzuki or a Honda is going to be there. And who knows, maybe the opportunity to find you a new bike, a new favorite motorcycle.
So that's Schwantzschool.com. Do a little homework. I can't think of a better reason to go out to the Atlanta area. Nice area out there to boot. We're talking about going around the racetrack here and with some of the best in the business. And something's really interesting about your history and some of your first early competitive years. We're going very, very slowly, which you still do and do very well.
You know, I think the description of well is I can do it and I don't hurt myself very often doing it. For me, that's well. Observe trials riding. It's something that was the first competition I rode as a kid. I've got a couple gas trials bikes. I've got a brand new OSA trials bike coming. And for me, it's something that I could ride in an area smaller than this stage. I can go out, I can practice riding, climbing over logs, riding over rocks, doing all kinds of skills that really help me in whatever type of motorcycle riding that I do. And I feel like what I learned a lot of trials riding was exactly the inputs that you put into the motorcycle, what effect they have on the motorcycle, and how important the foot pegs are in being able to control that motorcycle, just like they are on a street bike or on a motocross bike, anything else that we ride. So, yeah, trials is still right up there for me, that's for sure.
Neat. You grew up in the motorcycle business. Your folks owned a motorcycle shop. I know some of your family down there in Texas were all riders, well-known riders. So you really grew up in the business.
I did. I was born in 1964, and that's the same year that my parents got a Yamaha dealership, so our Yamaha franchise. So I almost rode out on a motorcycle when I was a kid. So, and I know every day when I got home from school, and I say home because both parents worked at the dealership. So when school finished, I went to the dealership, and then when the dealership closed, we went home. But if I hadn't gotten in too much trouble at school and I was making decent grades at the time, I was able to go ride my bike when I finished my homework. And I just remember as a kid how much fun that was and how peaceful it was. You know, at school, my sister was 2 years older than me and she was a much better student. I was the kid that just kind of scraped by. You know, those grades are good enough. You're not going to make me do this class again. But all the teachers, your sister was such a great student, what happened to you, rah, rah, rah. And then get to school, or get to the shop, and of course, I wanted to help all the mechanics around the shop work on the bikes. I wanted to help the parts guys figure out where parts were, and I think I was in the way more than I assisted, and so everybody was always giving me a hard time, and put that helmet on, tighten that chin strap. Nobody could give me a hard time anymore. It was a real peaceful time, and I remember how much I enjoyed riding my motorcycle as a kid, and I still have that same enjoyment today.
And of course, that obviously graduated up into your interest in racing, into road racing, and through superbike racing and on to the MotoGP circuit. You became part of the American glory days contingent. Roberts, Lawson, Rainey, Schwantz. I mean, those were the great days of 500 MotoGP racing. And you've remained in contact with your MotoGP your MotoGP friends, and with that, and you've done a lot of work with the different teams. And one thing that I want to touch on, and we've been doing it this weekend, the MotoGP community lost a very special young man in Marco Simoncelli this year. And I know you're very good friends with Marco, very close friends with the family. Give us a little insight as to why he was such a special young man.
I think probably what I liked, what I saw the most in Marco, was the fact that he was absolutely having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have every day. Whether it was at the racetrack, whether it was away from the racetrack, he always found a way to make light of what it was he was having to do, from a work standpoint, from a training standpoint, from whatever it was Marco was doing. He was doing it to the best of his ability, and he was having a real good time doing it. He was also that same person that, whether it was right after he and Danny Pedrosa had come together in Le Mans, or after his second place finish in Phillip Island, he was animated in his responses, and he was truthful. My intention was not to knock Danny down. My intention was to make the corner, and Danny went into a position where he shouldn't have been, and he explained it, and I think even though all the pressure that's involved in those situations, not just the situation racing, but Grand Prix motorcycle racing, and all the fans and all the media and all the manufacturer pressure and the team pressure that's there, Marco always had a smile on his face, Sunday race was on. He had his race face on. But I promise you, when he did up his chin strap on his helmet, big smile was, it just makes a big smile shape under your helmet. And that's the same way I raced. It was like, it's getting ready to be me against the world. Me and my motorcycle trying to show that we're the best ones out there. Marco was really good at staying real lighthearted about all of the modern day pressures that I think that confront all MotoGP riders and all professional racers to a certain extent.
A lot of things going on in MotoGP right now too. A lot of changes taking place. We now got the 1000cc class, the claiming rule teams. Some of your thoughts on some of the changes that are taken in MotoGP and kind of what it bodes for the future of the MotoGP class, the best in the business on that level.
Well, I guess let's start at Moto 3, which is what it's going to be called now, which is used to be 125s. With the lap that we did for Marco in Valencia, getting to see and getting to smell the two-strokes run for the last time to me was pretty special because the warm-up had already happened. But I think seeing four strokes there, as many manufacturers are interested in building engines for that class, as many manufacturers are going to be building chassis, I think we're going to see the numbers in that class start to grow back up. It was always 125 was like the best racing and the best class that was out there. And recently, those numbers have kind of dwindled a little bit. I think the new rules are really going to help that. Sad to see two strokes go completely, but I think that the new class and its structure is really going to help it. Moto 2 being opened up now. I think we're going to see more manufacturers wanting to get involved in that class as well. And then the CRT class, the CRT rules for claiming rule teams is going to make MotoGP a much deeper field. We're not going to see a real threat from the CRT teams to the factory bikes. I think we'll start the season and there'll be a space of somewhere between 2 and 3 seconds from, excuse me, from the back of the factory bikes to the front of the CRT field. But I think as we watch the season progress, those CRT teams are slowly going to start making inroads on the factory bikes. And I think the numbers in the class is what we need more of. But I also think so many of us realize how important MotoGP is for the development side of motorcycling. I mean, the technology that they run in 2011, which is this year, and also next year in 2012, will be stuff that we'll see on our production motorcycles. We'll reap the benefits of that because we will get to see stuff that they've developed throughout these next couple of years within the next 5 or 6 years. It's where new stuff is developed, and we don't want the manufacturers completely alienated. The manufacturers need to keep an involvement, and I think that's what we'll see with the engine side of things. They'll still have all the ability to take the technology and the data from that, be able to learn and develop, but it'll bring the cost of racing down a whole lot more. And especially right now, the economy the way it is on a global scale, it's definitely something that definitely needs to be taken into consideration. We may struggle with it next year, realizing that factory bikes and CRT bikes are going to be separated by so much at the start of the season. But everybody just give it a chance, and I think over the next couple of years, we'll get MotoGP right back to where those numbers are 25 or 35 strong in MotoGP, and Moto 2 and Moto 3 are going to continue to, groom future world champions for sure.
And it's going to be interesting to watch that as well with the Americans that are involved in MotoGP. Ben Spies, of course, on the factory Yamaha bike, and now Colin Edwards on a CRT BMW, and Nicky Hayden on the factory Ducati. And we hope those red bikes get going a little bit faster. What do you think as far as the red bikes? He going to be able to gather up, and is this going to be good for the red bikes for the Ducatis?
I don't know that we're gonna see much of a difference with the CRT bikes for Valentino and Nicky's bikes, but I sure hope that they find something, because I think all of us involved really want to see the 46 racing back at the front. He and Casey having battles, he and Lorenzo having battles, he and Spies having battles, he and Nicky having battles. So, for me, I had lunch. I was in Italy 3 weeks ago, and I had lunch with Valentino, and he's showing me all these new tracks he's building. He's building a new oval dirt track. It's about a half-mile long. He's got all these different big jumps and stuff that he's building. but he's still just as excited about his motorcycling career. He's nowhere near thinking about, last year was the last one or this year is going to be the last one. He wants to figure out what's wrong with that bike. He wants to work as hard as he's got to try and sort the Ducati out and get it back to the front, because I think he really realizes now what a lonely feeling it is not being able to see the front. And I think that's just more and more motivation for him and everybody at Ducati.
So, sounds like then, there's been some talk about Rossi with his automotive, and he's doing some rally racing. He's actually quite successful with his rally racing. And there's been a lot of people, there's been talk, I don't know if anybody's mentioned it to Valentino Rossi or not, but there's been a lot of talk about him being the next John Surtees. Had some test drives, but it almost sounds like he's driven now to get back. Do you think that'll come to fruition? Is he interested at all in racing cars, as far as you know?
He absolutely loves driving cars, whether it's rally cars, whether it's an opportunity to go test an F1 car. I could see him definitely being a John Surtees and jumping in a car and having a 10 or 12 year career there as well. So I think Valentino is the only one that really knows. But what I saw when I had lunch with him is his focus is still on everything that's got two wheels right now.
Over the years, of course, you've worked with a lot of the teams, and maybe get a little bit of the history here. You've worked with a lot of the teams, a lot of the riders, mentoring teams, mentoring riders, and being a coach. Who are some of the more interesting riders you've worked with? Some of the guys that maybe produced some challenges for you in terms of being a coach?
Well, I kind of took a step back from racing when I retired in '95, and I didn't get back involved in racing until '99. And I think my close friend Larry Pegram called and asked me to come be a coach for him to see if I couldn't help him, because he was struggling finding something to do. He felt like if I was there as a coach, maybe there was a little more opportunity for him to find some sponsorship. So I worked with Larry a little bit. He did manage to win one of the last races of the year at Willow Springs, which is, I think, Larry's only AMA Superbike win.
You may be right. I'm not sure.
He almost snuck up and won one a couple of years later. Anyway, neither here nor there.
He did win another one. You're right.
He did it at Topeka or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, from there I went back to work helping Suzuki in their race team, and anywhere from the guy who was the man at Suzuki then, Matt Mladen, to trying to help Spies figure out how to beat him. That made my opportunity to work with Matt really, really short, because Matt realized that Ben and I had gotten to be really good friends, and that anything he was talking to me about might be being used against him in telling Ben how to beat Matt. Not that I'd do something like that, but I'm sure Matt thought that way. Spies, an absolute dream to work with. Talent-wise, he never really needed anything except paying more attention to the fact that the race was 25 or however many laps long. He always wanted to be the fastest guy in qualifying. He'd sit there and they'd throw tires at the bike, tires, as long as they had to, until he finally got going fastest. The problem was, most of the time, practice was over, qualifying was finished, he was on pole, but he didn't have a nice setup that was going to let him be consistent throughout the whole race. Once we got him over that hurdle of, don't worry about the fast lap time, don't worry about that point for pole position, go get a race set up and get racy with it, then he was good. And once he started to win races, he realized that mentality is what he needed to further his career. After that, there's so many support Suzuki guys, Roger Lee Hayden, Blake Young this year especially. Blake wasn't a kid that needed much help this year. He did a lot of stuff right. Last year he did a lot of stuff wrong, and I think we learned from it. But that's kind of where my position is. I like to try and help, whether it's Suzuki guys or any of those other manufacturers out there, I like to try and help kids not make those same silly mistakes that I made. Not trying to find that one fast lap and end up crashing, and now I'm hurt, and now I don't get to ride for a month because I've got to get over this injury. To try and help groom those kids who have the possibility to be future world champions. I worked with Red Bull Rookies Cup in 2008 here in the U.S. Some of the kids that we had there, Benny Solis, Jake Gagne, just to name a few, have gone on and are doing great things. Benny's got a great Daytona Sport Bike ride with Team Bezra here in America. Gagne's coming back, and I think he's riding a Yamaha for Danny Walker here in American Daytona Sport Bike. J.D. Beach, Cameron Beaubier, those guys, watching those kids grow and start to be really, really competitive 600 racers now from being fast on 125s and smaller bikes coming through the ranks, something that really is rewarding for me, and it makes me realize as a kid how much more I wished I'd have had someone that I could have bounced ideas off of, or I could have asked questions of, but I'm happy to do it, and I enjoy every minute of it for sure.
What's interesting is that you even take that level of expertise, as you've alluded to, you take that over to the MotoGP world, and you know, we think of a MotoGP, we put MotoGP riders up here on this pedestal. They know all there is, that they're the best there is, and that how could they possibly need any help? But yet you're able to exchange ideas with those guys and some of them and help them be better riders as well. Maybe point some things out they didn't know. Even on that level, they're still open to advice and suggestions and mentoring.
Absolutely. I used to wonder why I'd go to certain racetracks that I struggled at the year before, and I'd go there and I'd struggle again the next year. And I'm thinking, now what am I doing wrong? I'm trying really, really hard. But it's so easy as a rider to just have tunnel vision and only really focus on one thing and not focus on all the small little things that really help make you smooth, help you find that rhythm, and help you be fast in the race. You got to work on race setup, not worry about fast laps. You got to focus on the big picture, which is the race, and not worry about lap times. And you know, it's like I mentioned earlier. There's so much pressure involved in racing these days. Sponsorship dollars are tight. Everybody wants to get the most that they can out of their money. So the manufacturers are pushing you, the sponsors are pushing you, the team's pushing you, and as a rider, a lot of times you need someone in your camp to bounce ideas off of, to say, hey, go watch me, you know, I'm struggling putting these laps together. Where is it that I'm making those little bitty mistakes that maybe I don't realize? So, you know, I think we need coaches in motorcycling just like we need coaches for whether we play football, baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever it happens to be, golf. You know, I think a coach for a motorcyclist is something that's really, really, really important.
Really interesting insight. I think we're going to open this up for a few minutes for some questions. Mason's going to bring his the microphone out here and float around the crowd a little bit. So if you got a question, raise your hand. You got a couple in the back there, Mason.
Hi, I'm going to start riding within the next month. What do you suggest type of bike that I start out with?
You know, I think the best thing to do is start off by going and taking an MSF, Motorcycle Safety Foundation course. Yeah, and they'll teach you on probably either a really small street bike or a small dirt bike. I like the idea of learning on a dirt bike because I can go take you and put you in a big field, and we can get the clutch thing figured out. We can get the brake thing figured out. We can figure out how to shift gears. You can figure out the skills to handle that motorcycle without having, you know, asphalt or concrete or whatever to fall on, and the damage to a dirt bike when you tip over, get up and you knock the dirt off the end and straighten the brake lever or the clutch lever, and you're ready to go riding again. So for me, that's the way I learned. I think I learned how to ride a motorcycle or a mini bike before I learned how to ride a bicycle. I thought, how do I want to pedal that? I like this, but it's a whole lot better. But always wear your proper safety equipment too. Very important.
Mason?
You mentioned Cameron Beaubier, and who in my eyes is like one of America's really great fast-growing talents. And he's a product of the Red Bull Academy, which you were heavily involved with. When you look at Cameron Beaubier and maybe a path forward to the premier sort of World Championship classes, I can't help but wonder what that path forward is from maybe Daytona Sport Bike where he's in now, how an emerging American talent can make it from America to the World Championship without having to go to Spain, for instance.
I agree. Cameron's one of the huge talents. I think last year he showed us in Daytona Sport Bike on a bike that was pretty under horsepower that he could ride with the best guys in the class. You know, I think that the next step for him after this year is to try and go get in and get on a good quality Moto2 team. You know, he's going to have to make that step and start. He's been over there. He's raced a year. They only did, I think, 6 rounds of Rookies Cup then, so he only knows 6 of the Grand Prix tracks right now. That still leaves 12 that he doesn't know right now. And that number could go from 18 to 20 over the next couple of years. We don't know. He just needs to go over and start getting some experience racing on those tracks, learning those racetracks, because that's where, as Americans, we come here and we race our championship. We learn how to ride 600s. We learn how to ride super bikes. but we don't get that experience on those international tracks, with the exception of maybe a Laguna Seca or an Indianapolis. Sorry, no, Everett, not an Indianapolis. Maybe it ends up on an AMA schedule eventually, but it's not right now. So you look at a Danny Pedrosa, you look at a Simoncelli, you look at a Rossi. Those guys were world champions by the time they were 17. And they learned that skill racing on the very tracks that they still race on today. So we've got to, as much as we want to hold on to our youth and try and keep them here, we got to realize if we've got someone good enough and fast enough, we need to get them overseas as quick as we can. And Spain has a really good Moto2 championship if you can't jump right straight into the World Championship. And a lot of times that's the ideas that Dorna have, is they've got a great academy, they've got a great Moto2 championship there to try and further that development of those young riders.
Kevin, so this is kind of multi-questions for you here. In terms of between you, Colin Edwards, Ben Spies, is there something in the water in Texas? And with the Colin Edwards, do you have any insight on the new program that he's doing? And on the side note, Greg White told me that he can take you on in go-kart racing.
Well, you know, Greg White, he's pretty good at everything he does, especially talking. Did I say that? Yeah, I don't know. If somebody asked me the same question earlier today, what is it in Texas? You know, it used to be you either had to be from the west or from the east. You know, they didn't even pay any attention to the middle of the United States. Hopefully we broke a bit of the ice there. We've also had Poland. We've also had Larry Schwarzbach. We've had a bunch of really good guys come out of Texas. And, you know, I always lean back on the idea that we race on a bunch of tracks that aren't very good. You know, they're pretty rough, they're pretty bumpy, they're pretty dangerous. And if you can survive racing in Texas, you'll probably be pretty good anywhere. So, Freddie raced in the CRC, Kaczynski raced in the same club as us. So, you know, we even though they're not Texans, the area of Texas I think has a real talent pool, that's for sure. I don't, you know, I talked to a lot of people that say say they absolutely love it. Between the dirt bike ride and the playing around and the camaraderie and the gun shooting and everything that they do, everybody that I says gives it a big thumbs up.
Yep, go ahead, next question.
Yes, when you were racing, how much rear brake did you use?
Absolutely none. You know, and today, if my intention is to go fast, actually I'm going to have to change my answer to that question. Riding a vintage bike at Barber, the Manx Norton that I raced a month ago or so.
October, yeah.
End of October. I had to use rear brake to get it stopped. Those double leading shoe cable actuated brakes. You could grab it, hold it to the center, squeeze it, hold it to the grip, and get to the center of the corner and release it. It struggled that much to slow the bike down. And I found that I ended up having to cover the rear brake to help get the bike stopped. My Grand Prix career, I can tell you the 3 times I used this, and I talk about this in my class, the 3 times I used the rear brake, all 3